Look out, something is going to get you tonight. Let's talk about the thing that's going to get you tonight. Welcome to the Happy Harvest Horror
Show. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Corrie.
And I'm Brian, and this is the Happy Harvest Horror Show.
And it's Brian's birthday.
Oh, no, what? Yeah.
It's Brian's birthday celebration day.
That's the one. Mark your calendars for next year. You missed it this one.
Too late now.
You missed it.
December 2nd, Sagittarius, baby.
Mm-hmm. Same as Britney Spears.
Oh, you do have the same birthday as Britney Spears.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, we're kindred spirits, I think. She and I.
I love that. I love that for you. I really do. That's great. Britney is like, I stand Britney. Like, Britney is just a cultural phenomenon, and she has maintained such an incredible cult following. And
she has a
Britney
bonkers Instagram. Have you watched
at
any of her posts or stories? She's off the rails, but she's great. We love her.
I mean, yeah, we won't get into the whole Britney Spears conspiracy, the conservatorship over her life, and it gets dark. So
even though it is spooky, and that's what
it is spooky, but love you, Britney. Send in all my good energy to you on your birthday, and to you, Brian.
Thanks
on your birthday.
We both appreciate it. Thank you.
How spooky was your week?
It was pretty spooky. You're gonna probably love this, but I went back and I've been watching a lot of American Horror Story.
Oh,
so I went back and finished 1984. Mostly just I had time to do it, the most recent season, and I found myself actually having a lot of fun with it. It was probably the one season that I was going to really jive with because it was 80s slasher kind of themed.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back and I was like, man, this is super campy, but I had fun. This is fun. And so then I was like, maybe I've been too hard on this show. And so I went back and finished Asylum. And I don't think I have been too hard on the show.
But, no, I have not.
No, I have not. But I am continuing on. I'm now... Just to have a context, because I can't rag on something if I haven't seen it. That is true. So I'm now just watching all of it to have sort of a horror, pop culture knowledge of it all. And I'm not, I'm not having a miserable time. There's a lot of fun things happening. There were some really fun parts in Asylum. Now I'm going through Coven, and Jessica Lange is so good. She's wonderful. And Kathy Bates is great.
Yeah, everyone says Coven is the one to watch. I still haven't watched it yet, but
I mean, it's
maybe I'll start. Maybe I'll start tonight. Who knows?
Maybe. I mean, it's nuts. I'm not going to say it's like, I had this conversation with Connor, who was on for our Catholic podcast, and we were talking that
the way you worded that made it sound like we have an entire
podcast
not on this about being Catholic.
yeah, and all the joys that come with that. No, but we were talking about American Horror Story, and we were basically saying that I've never been scared at any point in American Horror Story. There's been many times that I've been really repulsed,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the show is more interested in making you just squeamish, oh, wasn't this gnarly and sexually uncomfortable? And I'm like, yeah, it was.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Good job.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's why I really liked 1984, is because I feel like it tapped into some really fun slasher hijinks where it was just kind of over the top and its kills and all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I love that. That's great stuff. But yeah, we'll keep going. I'll see what I think, and then we can have maybe we'll have a whole episode once we've gone through it all in an American Horror Story episode.
Yeah, I like that plan.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for what I've been doing. I watched Prom Night 1 and Prom Night 2 recently. A hot take, I do not like Prom Night 1, and I love Prom Night 2. Hello, Mary Lou.
I haven't seen either.
You don't have to see the first one. But fight me. Go on Happy Harvest Horror Show at Instagram.com.
and fight me.
And fight me. Let's throw down. Because I love having these conversations. Anyway, hello, Mary Lou. Prom Night 2. I think is so fun and deserves your attention. It's just like a nutso high school slasher. That's it. How about you? How spooky was your week?
Let's see. Two things come to mind. First was actually today. I talk about them all the time. Ghoul Boys, BuzzFeed Unsolved.
You love them.
We love them. They actually have started their own media company called Watcher. And it's doing really well. They just, oh God, they pump out content like nobody's business. It's, as a fellow content creator, they're definitely, goal worthy. But they have a series that they did it during October, and then now they're doing like a Christmas version this month, and it's called Too Many Spirits. And what they do, I love it so much. There's 4 episodes, but they film them all in one night. And each episode, they read ghost stories from viewers, listeners,
right,
that people sent in. And they'll read the ghost stories and they'll rate them like on a scale of 1 to 10 spirits. They'll rate them. And they also drink while they're doing this. But what makes it even better is that they film them all in one night. So like the first episode, they're still, they're pretty lucid. And every episode, they just get drunker and drunker. And it's filmed in like, I think it's Ryan's parents' backyard. And they have like, a campfire. And it's just so fun. And the first episode of their holiday version of that came out today. So that was just like a joy. And just also some really fun, spooky stories from listeners,
I love that.
Yeah, so super fun. Check that out. Love it so much. And then I also fangirled a little because I posted about it on our Instagram, and I saw that Shane Madej watched our story. And I was like, is this happening? Did we?
We've made it. Back it
Actually,
up, boys.
one time I posted, this one was even bigger for me, off topic, but was even bigger for me. One time I posted something and I tagged Hassan Minaj in it, and he watched it. And I have the biggest crush in the world on Hassan Minaj. So I got very excited about that.
Bet. That's awesome. That's wonderful.
Yeah. But anyways, so yeah, that super fun. Check it out. And then I watched, it's been huge. Everyone was talking about it. And that's the only reason I watched it, because I also just jacked my friend's HBO account.
Ayo.
I watched The Undoing.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet. Is it spooky or is it more like a procedural sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a thriller.
Okay.
And there is definitely a very gruesome murder scene in it that was not fun to watch. But yeah, so it's definitely more of like, crime procedural thriller type vibe. But yeah, there's, some horror elements in that regard. I won't give anything away, but like I watched it because everyone was like talking about the ending, and like a lot of people were saying they didn't like they were mad about who the killer actually was.
That's exactly what I heard. It's the only context I have for the show is people hated it.
I liked the ending.
You did? Okay.
I'm going to be the the antagonist, I guess, here. I think the ending was really smart and really interesting.
Okay.
And was the whole point of the show. So,
okay. All right.
So I get why it made people mad. But honestly, if it would have ended differently, I don't know that I would have really liked the show that much. It would have just been kind of like, because like in a lot of ways, it is just your run of the mill, crime procedural, like the very wealthy, very privileged white people in New York City, blah, 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 like nothing really that exciting. I do love Nicole Kidman, even though she pretty much always plays the same character, but I do love her anyways. It wasn't bad, but there wasn't anything about like the rich people in New York City story is unbelievably played out, dude. Oh and my God. It's just like it's been done on every level so many times. So if it hadn't have ended the way that it did, I think it would have just been kind of boring personally. But That's my take on it. Once again, going back to what you said earlier, Brian, if you want to fight me about it, come to Happy Harvest Horror Show.
Listen, we're throwing down here. This is, our DMs are just going to be fire.
Yeah, Happy Harvest Horror Show at Gmail or on Instagram. Let's argue about some
fight.
Stuff. Let's fight.
It's funny you mentioned HBO because I think they've been really killing it with horror, really. A few different shows. They've done, I don't know if you watched The Outsider last year.
No, I need to.
Stephen King. I read the book. I really liked the book and I liked the show a lot too. But they've also done Lovecraft Country, which was huge this summer. I still have a few episodes left. I haven't finished, but that's been really, really cool to see that kind of budget on that kind of story. And there's another show with Jude Law called The Third Day, also halfway through. I'm like halfway through a lot of shows right now. And I'm trying to go back and finish it. But The Third Day, it's like this very folk horror. It's got a lot of notes of like The Wicker Man, where he finds this girl that attempted suicide and brings her back to this island. And it's this island in England where, what do you call it? Where there's like a road that when the tides are different, you can only cross it up certain parts of the day because there are parts of the day where it's underwater. There's an actual word for it, but I can't remember. But anyway,
I want to know what that word is.
Word?
That's very poetic and beautiful. I really want to know what the word is.
It was the same location was used for the movie The Woman in Black. So if that rings any bells of, the tide going over the road. But anyway, so he's stuck on this island and it's kind of eerie Christian, religious, maybe culty group.
Yes.
And he's stuck there. And so I won't say anymore, but it's the few episodes that I'm in are rad. Love folk horror a lot.
Same. Yeah, that sounds up my alley.
Yeah, sure. Check that out. So then we can talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just saying like HBO, like hell yeah, for like jumping on this horror zeitgeist that we're in, which I love that we're in as a society that everyone's like, yeah, horror is rad. And I'm like, yeah, it always was. But yes, yeah, let's keep going.
They do great things at HBO. They really do.
Well, they have money.
I know that HBO money makes good art. Like, I don't know what to say.
It's almost like we should fund the arts and we would get good art.
I know, right?
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm probably out of my depth here. What do I know? Fucking.
Damn it.
Well, anyway,
what are we talking about today, Brian?
Well, we are now in the weeks leading up to Christmas, so we thought we'd kick off the holiday season with a movie that's both Halloween Harvest and Christmas time, and that is The Nightmare Before Christmas. So we're going to talk about kind of history, making other little tidbits about it. I'm excited to talk about this, especially on my birthday, because this is one of my favorite movies.
I feel like we're having a little Brian celebration here because I know it's one of your top childhood films, and and I definitely think of you whenever I think of this movie. So
if I've done nothing else right, I've done that right.
I've done nothing else in my life. But yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah. Do you want a quick word from our sponsors first?
Oh yeah, I suppose.
We love them. So let's give them our time. So let's hear from us real quick.
We've returned.
Welcome back. I'm so glad you are back from hearing from us to hear from us again.
We're talking about Nightmare Before Christmas. Is it a Halloween movie? Is it a Christmas movie? Who's to say?
Well, it's both, I guess. But man, I don't know. When I grew up, I always thought it was more of a Halloween movie, but it definitely is taking over Christmas. But it ends in Halloween Town. That's my thing. It comes back to Halloween and everyone's like, actually, Halloween's pretty fucking rad. And I'm like, you're right.
You're right. You're right. It is.
You're right.
I love to. I was thinking about this today because, like I said, I always think of you when I think of this movie. And it makes so much sense because obviously I have like a Halloween podcast with you. So I think of you and I think spooky horror, just over the top Halloween stuff. But also I very much think of you when I think of Christmas because like you have always had like a love for Christmas as well.
I love holidays. What can I say? But just these two. Just these two. The other 10 months of the year can fuck off. It's just these two.
Just Halloween, just Christmas. And I do too. Like, and that's another reason why I love that we're doing this like on your birthday, because I love ritualized celebration. I really do. And I love cultural moments of ritualized celebration. And to me, Nightmare Before Christmas is just such, I mean, aesthetically, the entire vibe, the entire concept, it's all about wrapping up what makes Halloween Halloween and what makes Christmas Christmas, you know?
Yeah, I do. I agree. It encapsulates both holidays, right? And it celebrates them both, that they're both very fun and very exciting, and in celebrating them in a animation and in a world that I'd never seen before. And that's the beauty of this movie, is it makes entire worlds out of these like ethereal ideas like holidays. They're like, no, they're actually a place, or they're a thing. They're a tangible group of people that are there that bring this about all the time. The imagination of this story is so cool, and it's the first feature length all stop motion animated movie too, that that it was never, I mean, just the actual animation style, we'd never seen anything like it. And I think that
I thought that was super interesting, that it was the first full length, like feature length claymation film.
Yeah I mean, there's been stop motion in the past for, since the dawn of cinema, but as like a fully length feature film, Yeah,
I didn't realize that it had that title.
And it's rad. It is animation because we're a series of pictures taken, but you're watching live, actual physical objects move. It's movie magic. I mean, I don't know.
It really is.
It sounds corny to say, but I mean, like it makes my heart catch on fire watching that movie. It's like so fun.
Oh, it's unbelievably, aesthetically speaking, it is a beautiful film. I'm definitely a big, I'm a big image person, right? Like art historian. Like I really like images, and I love moving images, but I also really like breaking down moving images to stills and like beautiful movie stills. Oh, love it so much. And this movie is just such a treat for that,
Absolutely.
Just so many absolutely beautiful shots, because literally it's claymation. So every moment is a completely designed shot, know?
Yeah.
There's no in between. There's no throwaway. Like it's literally every single shot you stop and you're looking at the whole of what's happening. And something about that is from just a creative standpoint, it's just really beautiful. And it's a gorgeous film. And kind of speaking to that, like the aesthetic of it, we both watched, it was very serendipitous because we decided yesterday we were going to record this episode. And then at the exact same time, this show popped up on Netflix. It's been around for a while. It's called The Movies That Made Us. Yeah. And they decided to do a holiday version where they do an episode on Nightmare Before Christmas, and they also do an episode on Elf, which I am excited to watch.
Same.
And what's really fun about this show is I think if you're a creative, like if you're a creator or an artist or someone who really, really likes to get deep into film, this is a show for you, because it really picks apart those little things. And that can be really fun if you like to think about the little bits and pieces that go into making a movie happen. And one of the things that came up in this episode about Nightmare Before Christmas was just aesthetically in creating Halloween Town, that the parameters for creating Halloween Town, I think, are just a really interesting creative exercise. Like Halloween Town, the entire town was supposed to be all black, white, and orange.
Yep, those were that was the parameters set by Tim Burton himself when he was like,
yeah, they were not to use any colors but black, white, and orange. And then the other parameter that I really liked is no right angles. No right angles,
which is very much the Tim Burton style. Yep.
Yes, Halloween Town. And the way they describe it in the show too is if you were to cut across the plane at any point in a shot, everything would fall apart. Everything would crumble, right? Because there's no right angles.
Exactly.
And I was like, that is so dope. I love that.
Yeah. still speaking to why I fell in love with this movie when I was 4 years old. My mom brought home this VHS of this movie. It was like truly, and since I've never really seen anything like this, that people try to create these worlds in these different places that I have never seen before, but they're all kind of echoes of things that we already have. Whereas this place, like just down to the structures and the geometric shapes they're happening, nothing should be standing, everything.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't exist. And yet it does. And it's so cool. It's so living. Love it.
Yeah. And that definitely is part of the magic of what Tim Burton is able to do. Like, he has created worlds all his own. It's, at this point in time, we have a very, I think, solid idea of what a Tim Burton world looks like. But when this movie came out, it was not that yet, right? He was a big deal, but he wasn't, it hadn't been as established yet.
Right.
And it definitely wasn't done in this context with like claymation and this kind of in between, like, kids movie, but not kids movie. It really just existed in a space that hadn't been done before. There really is no better way to put it.
Yeah. And it is, we're talking about Tim's contributions, and it is his vision and his story and his sketches. I love his art. It's so very strange, all of it. But this, we have to give credit where it's due, that like Rick Hendricks is the one that made his little doodles into three-dimensional models that he, in collaboration with director Henry Selick, that they are the ones that really created this whole Halloween town. It's kind of a shame that it gets, I don't know if reduced is the word, but like Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, like, well, yeah, he did do that. And, this, like what we're talking about, this marvel of stop motion animation and creating these models and these figures, that really wasn't him. That was Rick Hendricks and 120 other workers that were over 20 sound stages that created this. So I want to tip hat to them, because they're the ones that
teamwork makes the dream work,
That's what
like
they say.
Yeah, no, totally. Like, the concepts, the sketches, did come from the strange mind of Tim Burton, 100%. But Nightmare Before Christmas isn't a book of sketches. It's a claymation film. So yeah, definitely Henry Selick, one of the unsung heroes of Nightmare Before Christmas. And what was the other guy's name?
Rick Heinrich. He worked with Tim while he was at Walt Disney. Same with Henry Selick. Well, I guess we can get into the history of how this became about, because this kind of all started way back when Tim Burton created a short film called Vincent in 1982. Thanks to this short film, he was then employed at the Walt Disney Animation Studios on a kind of an animation, I think it was a 2-year sort of apprenticeship was the situation. And while he was there, he made a 3-page poem called The Nightmare Before Christmas, which is what we're talking about. But unfortunately, during his time there, Walt Disney Studios thought his style and his art just really didn't jive with Bambi, our cartoon centered
I like that you jumped to Bambi.
It's Bambi, right? I was just trying to think of like a cute, Disney.
No, it was great. It was a perfect example.
Yeah. What I'm getting at is they didn't fit, which they don't. They're very different art styles.
Yes, totally.
But before they parted ways, he was already working with Disney to make the 30-minute TV special of this. So they had the rights to the movie. So when they parted ways, he could no longer make this movie because Disney had the rights. Fast forward a few years, Tim Burton has become rather successful. He directed Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and then he went on to make other movies like Beetlejuice. Hats off to Beetlejuice. Fucking love Beetlejuice. And Batman. Batman was a huge mega hit. So now everyone was like, oh, Tim Burton. He's making these like crazy, wild movies. He's now a household name. So with these directing chops, he goes back to Disney Studios and says, I want this movie. And Disney was like, how about we make the movie with you, though? So he brings back Henry Selick and Rick Hendricks, and they're going to make this movie. However, Tim Burton's involvement in this is rather minimal because he's currently already directing Batman Returns, which will go on to be a really cool Christmas movie in itself. So the reins were then passed on to Henry Selick and group up in San Francisco while Tim Burton was away making Batman Returns. Interesting fact that over the 2 years of making Nightmare Before Christmas, Tim Burton only came to the studio 5 times. He was there for like a collective, like no more than 10 days on set of making this movie. And what you got to know about, if you already don't, stop motion animation is it's so slow. It is painstakingly slow to do. You're looking at maybe 2 to 3 seconds of footage on a good day of making.
When I was while I was watching the Movies That Made Us special, when they were kind of talking about that, the first thing I thought of was Parks and Rec, where Ben gets into claymation. Do you remember that episode?
I don't know. I don't remember this one.
It's one of my favorite moments. Like, Ben gets fired or he resigns in disgrace, and then he's like taking up all these hobbies, and he like takes up claymation, and like everyone is like they're like, oh, Ben's super depressed, but he's on top of the world. Like, he doesn't realize he's depressed because he's like really into his claymation. He's like, let me show you my claymation video, and he like shows it, and it's literally like 3 seconds, and then he has a whole meltdown, and he's like, how is it not longer? It's so good.
It's been so long.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I do not have the patience for claymation at all. I don't know. It surprises me that people do.
Yeah.
Claymation and just cartoons in general. Like, wow. That is impressive.
A lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to really love what you're animating to like stick with it, to not get bored of it. I mean, it's also, you have to have such a concrete plan too, that Leica Studios, they're out of Portland. They made, Paranorman and Coraline.
Yeah. Coraline.
Kubo and the Two Strings, which is so good if you haven't seen Kubo. All these movies are amazing. Go support this studio because they're really the only ones doing stop motion animation right now. But I've seen behind the scenes of them, and they have like storyboards down to like the day, like super concrete calendars, because that's what you need to pull this stuff off, which makes it even more impressive that Nightmare Before Christmas did not have that. They had a writer, Michael McDowell, who wrote Beetlejuice. He was originally pegged to write the screenplay for this. That did not turn out well, and they were running behind on schedule, so that they just went ahead and started making songs first. So before they even had a script, they just started writing songs for this movie. So Danny Elfman was brought on. He had never done movie scores before, and now he's doing one of his best, I think, in this movie. And they wrote these songs, What's This, and all this, so much so that Danny Elfman became Jack Skellington himself. He's like, I feel like this is who I should be playing. And he's like, yeah, you got the job. More on that later. Danny Elfman was living with Caroline Thompson, and at the time dating, who did this screenplay for Edward Scissorhands. So previously worked with Tim Burton also. She was then hired to write the screenplay, and then suddenly we have a story and songs, and everything's great, right? Everything's going to be so smooth sailing from here on out. Not really. It's really hard to make this movie.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of drama in the story of how Nightmare Before Christmas came to be. Like,
yeah, and not the least of which, just on a business standpoint, that they because they didn't have these plans and didn't know what to do, and it was the first, like we said, stop motion feature length movie. They didn't know how much it was going to cost. So Disney was like, you get $18 million in 2 years, go. And the producer, this is really fun part of the documentary that we were just talking about, because she, I want to make sure I have her name right. What was her name? Oh man, I'm going to goof it.
Don't goof it.
Dude, I'm fucking goofing it right now. Where were you?
Where are you? Where are you?
Kathleen
I'm
Gavin.
So sorry.
Sorry. I cannot sleep. I cannot dream tonight.
That's actually perfect, because that song is a fucking reference to Nightmare Before Christmas. If you didn't know, I Miss You by Blink-182
is Nightmare Before Christmas. Yep. So at Disney, they gave him $18 million in 2 years to work on it. Kathleen Gavin, who was a co-producer on the movie and was in charge of kind of keeping things on track, quickly realized that they needed not $18 million to finish this movie. They needed $24 million. So, in a genius move that I think is probably emulated all the time with producers in Hollywood, she took like the storyboards and the animation that they have done, and they brought the story and all the songs to Disney. And Disney saw the screening and they were like, yeah, this looks really good. This looks really great. And she's like, okay, cool. That's a $24 million movie. And they were like, what? And like, yeah, we can do 18, but the things you just said you liked, can't happen. And so just like a beautiful case of entrapment that I think is how I got to start looking at money from now on.
Right. I also like the way she tells the story in the documentary too, because she's just like, okay, 24 million. Like, that's what that is. Like very matter of fact.
Which is funny because at this time it was on the lower end of budgets for Disney big blockbuster movies. They weren't expecting to make like big Aladdin money with this, but they were hoping. I mean, Disney wants to make money. But
there's one thing I know, it's that Disney wants to make money.
They need to make money. They don't even want they really, fucking foaming at the mouth. Really they need money. And so, yeah, that was one little drama, the budget of it. What else do we have? We got...
they did end up getting the 24 million.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So,
yeah, this is a $24 million movie.
Yeah, the 24 million ended up happening. They ended up getting to make the movie that they wanted.
It also didn't hurt, which is another genius move on the animators, that the first thing that they animated was the Christmassy "What's This" song. And and then they brought that to Disney, and Disney's like, yeah, this looks great. You know,
we could get on board with this.
Yeah, we could get on board with this, and then saving all the scary Halloween Town stuff for later. 10 out of 10, you guys love it. What else? I guess that we talk about the screenplay itself, that Caroline Thompson wrote the screenplay for this animated feature. It took 2 years to animate this movie, and in the creative process, and you're animating, things naturally probably change. Like, it probably wouldn't have happened this way. I think it'll happen this way a little bit, which obviously creates contention within a writer, which I think is probably just a song as old as the hills of a writer being frustrated 100%. With a process of bringing their words to the screen.
Just creators in general having to come up, compromise. Compromise is hard.
Compromise is hard. Yeah, 100%. But Caroline Thompson, is largely attributed to the work that she did on Sally, that Sally is the character that she turned out to be thanks to her. So we thank you, Caroline, because Sally...
Yeah, she definitely gave some dimension to the character. Like, she wasn't really the heroine that she ended up being in the beginning.
Agreed. Yeah, and so they finished the movie. It happened. They released it in 1993. But before releasing, Disney did a little test screening to a group of kids in Hollywood to see, let's see what they think about it. What do they think? Kids didn't know what to think at all because they'd never seen anything like it, which is true because there was never anything like it. So Disney got real skittish and was like, "Oh shit, this isn't a kids movie at all. We gotta market this to something else." So they distributed it through Touchstone Pictures instead of Walt Disney, which was their sister company, and they called it Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. That's when that came in.
In other words, they were trying really hard to separate themselves from this, but still make a profit on it.
Yeah. Which, that tune changed real hard 10 years later when everyone fucking loves this movie. And they're like, oh yeah, right. It was all us. Now when you go back and watch the movie, it says Walt Disney Pictures presents.
Yeah, it's definitely on Disney Plus. It's definitely like, oh, this was Disney. This was a Disney film. I'm sure they've made crazy money off of merchandising.
Oh my God, nuts money. But
that is nuts.
That is
money.
Big dumb money after merchandising, just from Hot Topic alone. My God.
Right? Oh my goodness.
I remember that. I mean, like I said, we're talking about our history with this movie. I remember being a kid and growing up with this with my own VHS. And as I kind of went through middle school as a kid, I did not find any other kids that loved this movie, that I thought in my pre-internet world that I was kind of alone in my love for this movie, which made me love it even more, Yeah,
no, it's definitely a testament to your hipster nature, for sure.
Okay. Jesus, my God.
I mean that
fucking
in
reading
a loving,
me on this podcast.
Loving way. I do. I mean, you're an early adopter of Nightmare Before Christmas. Like, own it. There's nothing wrong with that.
I liked it before it was cool, okay? Or before I knew anyone else liked it was cool. That's what it was.
You did, though. I mean, I've heard the story.
Just little Brian in his skinny pants and his...
Oh man.
Oh man. Fast forward to high school and then discovering Hot Topic and then saying oh shit, they got Nightmare Before Christmas stuff. Look at this. This is cool.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about this because I was thinking about that and thinking about this resurgence that happened. So just like quick recap, came out in 93,
Yep.
did okay, but didn't do super well, was not a blockbuster hit.
Yeah, it had
it just like was a movie.
Yeah, $24 million budget, made $50 million. So
yeah,
and
it wasn't really targeted at kids because it didn't read very well with kids. So it's kind of more of like this teen movie. So yeah, didn't do super well. But then there was this huge resurgence like 10-ish years later, and who knows how these things happen. Chances are there were just a lot of people in the world like you, Brian, who attached to it when it wasn't popular.
Yeah,
and then as they got older, it became more part of their personality. But I have to at least entertain the possibility that Blink-182 had something to do with that.
Well, Blink-182 was right there with us. That's what it was.
Well, because think about it. The movie came out in 1993. Blink-182's I Miss You came out in 2003.
Yeah.
And it was literally a reference to Nightmare Before Christmas. And who was listening to Blink-182? Like all of us weird little pop punk.
You better believe I was.
Hot Topic going kids. Like I'm 100% going to make a like diagram chart of the overlap between like Blink-182 and Nightmare Before Christmas. Like that is a space that exists. So part of me is just, I have to entertain the possibility that they helped that resurgence happen. You know what I mean? I don't know that that's true, but like part of me wants it to be.
I think it's all true. I think that a very popular song, "We Can Live Like Jack and Sally If We Want," blah, 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 Tom DeLonge, that
out there looking for aliens. That's what he's doing nowadays.
But that, those lyrics were suddenly in the pop culture canon, that for an audience like me at that age, 13 years old, was like, oh shit, yeah, I'm singing this song and I like this movie. Yeah, I like this.
Exactly.
I think you might be onto something.
I think there was like a compound nature to it. Cause like if you were a kid who enjoyed that film and then all of a sudden, Blink-182 has this huge smash hit and like they're talking about it, like that's gonna bring that back up in your consciousness.
Right.
And when you're an emo 12-year-old, like you're gonna attach to that as part of your personality,
Totally.
And so I think that's what a lot of us did. I think that is probably part of what happened. I'm not saying that is what happened for everyone, but I do think that might be part of it. And I'm going to throw it back over to you. But basically what happened was around this time frame, Nightmare Before Christmas blew up like it had never blown up
Huge.
Before.
Now everyone loves this movie. Or if you hate this movie, fight me. Come on.
Just another antagonist.
How do you hate this movie? Other than like, oh, it's so popular. Like, okay, yeah, I get it. You just read me as a hipster. I get that. But but I think this is popular for a reason. It's good. It's good stuff.
It is. It's a good movie. It's a creative film. It's, it's unlike anything else. Like,
and it was,
you got to at least appreciate that.
Right. Right. And I mean, it was critically acclaimed too. I mean, like, I look on a Rotten Tomatoes, it's got 95%. A lot of, I mean, Roger Ebert loved it, called it the world it creates is comparable to like Star Wars. It's like something we'd never seen before. Like it got love from it. And then it was even nominated at the Oscars for best visual effects. It lost to Jurassic Park, which like fair.
Fair. Oh, God damn. I love Jurassic Park so much.
So, like, if it was going to lose to another movie, it was going to be that one.
Yeah. Every time I go back watching Jurassic Park, I'm just like, this movie is fucking great. Like,
that movie
it's
fucks,
so good.
Dude.
It's so good. It's so good. It really holds up. It's such a good film. That will forever be top movie.
It's an all-timer.
Would you consider Jurassic Park horror?
Absolutely.
Okay, we should do a Jurassic Park episode at some point then.
Same way I would consider Jaws horror. And people, they're like, no, it's action adventure. I'm like, sure. And like,
and it's terrifying.
It's so scary. Like, I mean, it's like Hitchcockian. It's a suspense. It's a creature feature.
Yeah.
I mean, it blows my mind when people think Jaws and Jurassic Park are just adventure movies. I'm like, yeah, they are, and they're horror. Like,
yeah, totally.
The scenes that are set up with actual textbook suspense, and it's trying to scare you. Anyway. Fucking people, right?
Am I right?
Am I right? That's my other podcast. Fucking people. Yeah, back to this. For years and years, it kind of sat dormant. Resurgence, Hot Topic, Tom DeLonge.
Love it. Should we talk about the alternate ending?
Oh, yeah. Another fun bit of drama. There was talks of having an alternate ending. If you're unfamiliar with Nightmare Before Christmas, please stop and go watch it. And if you are, which I'm sure you should be, the movie ends with Oogie Boogie, keeping Santa and Jack and Sally hostage. And then Jack comes in and saves the day and then takes off his Oogie Boogie burlap sack. And it turns out he is made of a bunch of bugs. The alternate ending, when the sack is taken off, revealed that it was Dr. Finkelstein all along. Like a classic kind of Scooby-Doo, like, oh, it was Old Man Finkelstein all along.
Mm-hmm. And also, just to clarify, Dr. Finkelstein, he's like the evil scientist who made Sally,
right,
and then like tried to keep her hostage, basically.
Yeah.
And a wonderful twist of misogynistic bullshit.
Yep.
But yeah, so that was the alternate ending, that Oogie Boogie is also the evil scientist.
Correct. That alternate ending was presented to Tim Burton. Tim Burton famously hated it, so much so that he cooked a hole in a wall with his size 14 Doc Martens.
One thing that the documentary episode made very clear to me is that Tim Burton has some very toxic anger issues.
Totally. Which I'm sure, I'm not trying to excuse him at all. I think I think he was a hot director, and I think this is a product of Hollywood that just allows hot directors to get away with fucking murder, and that enables him to throw tantrums,
Yep.
I'm saying both are culprits here.
Totally. The age-old story, and it's so frustrating. Like, why do creative geniuses have to be assholes?
They always got to be fucking assholes, dude.
Why? Like, why can't you just be an okay person?
Right?
Like, I just don't understand.
Just be okay, and we'll love you.
You don't have to be the best person. Just be okay.
And we'll love you for fucking forever. Like,
I know. Just be okay. Like, I'm asking the bare minimum here. Like,
just be like Tom Hanks and like collect typewriters. Like, fuck yeah, dude. He's figured it out. He's like, I just got to not screw up and have a like, cute little hobby. There, you got it.
Done. And we can celebrate Forrest Gump for all of eternity.
And we don't have to feel bad about it ever. Or we're going through the ringer right now with Harry Potter. Like, God, just stop.
Just stop. Just be okay.
Should be okay. Which, yeah. So getting back to Nightmare Before Christmas, he wasn't okay at that. And he wasn't also okay at, so Caroline, the writer of the screenplay of this movie, also had some hesitations on Oogie Boogie as a character himself. I'm reading from slashfilm.com this article that basically quotes her as saying, the Oogie Boogie character looked like a Klansman with his pointed burlap hat. Oogie Boogie is a derogatory term for African Americans in the American South, and I begged the powers that be to change something about that character. Because of that, I said, this is so ugly and dangerous and antithetical to everything inside of me, and I did not win that fight, which they kind of glaze over in this documentary where she goes to Tim Burton and says, I want to take another rewrite at the ending. And she describes how Tim Burton basically threw a fit and like started attacking an editing machine. So more toxic masculinity. So, and that was also echoed by Danny Elfman, who was also worried that the character would have been seen as potentially racist. But Ken Page, a black actor, did voice him for the movie. I mean, just in the research for this, I'd never heard of these concerns about Oogie Boogie, the character. I'd never thought about it that way. I can totally, I mean, hearing these creatives talk about their character and their concerns, I totally see it now. But I don't know. Did you ever run into that in your awareness? Or
no, it's definitely the first time hearing of it, but that makes sense. Those are, sometimes it's things like that. Someone has to bring it up before you see it.
Totally.
But I definitely can see why that would be a concern, and you don't know what the intentions are. Sometimes things kind of happen, but like, regardless of what the intentions are, obviously someone saw that this could be a problem, and it was not handled correctly. Like it was,
Right.
it was handled abusively, you know, it was just not like, that's not how you handle that kind of a situation.
Right.
So, you know, not great, not awesome.
Yeah. I think this has probably gotten more traction in recent years, especially with I think it was in the last few years, someone was asking Tim Burton, why are all your characters in all your movies white? I mean, they're not just white, they're like pasty white, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And he did a pretty tone deaf response where he's like, they don't fit into my aesthetic. Paraphrasing, but it's what he kind of said. And that was like, oof, Jesus, dude.
Yikes.
Not chill. So, I mean, back to like we were saying earlier, just be okay. Like, fucking,
like, just Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ, dude. You've made, I mean, also arguably hasn't made a decent movie in a long time. So I don't know.
That's true too. That's true too.
So yeah, it kind of brings to an age old discussion of like, what do we do with art made by assholes, you know, that or turn out to be assholes. And I don't know.
It's a conversation I have every day of my life.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just like such a consistent conversation, and there's no answer. Like, there's no clear answer.
Mm-hmm. But it's worth. I mean, I think it's important to bring it up. You know, that
100%, because then you can at least get a fuller picture. To me, that's the answer: is get the fullest picture you can and go from there instead of blindly hailing someone as just like a genius without actually like looking at everything.
Yeah.
Like,
I think what this has kind of done for me is, I mean, Beetlejuice and Nightmare Before Christmas are like top 5 for me. I can always go back to them. I love these movies so much. I also have no interest in ever meeting Tim Burton, I think, you know, I think I don't know if it's good to separate the artist from the art. I don't know. It's a tough discussion, but I think it's just always good to bring it up, and especially in things that you really love, because it's a lot harder to do it then.
I think it's both and, you know, like I think you can separate the artist from the art and view art as its own thing. And then at the same time, you cannot. And both of those things can exist, right?
Right.
Like I can just look at an artwork and I can honor certain contributions of an artist, and like that can be a thing.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I can recognize the problems. I think in this discussion of like, what do we do with, you know, the art of bad men or whatever?
Right.
It's like, we want a clear answer. And my answer is there is not one. And that's okay. But the worst thing I think you can do is just pretend like everything's fine. Like, you know what I mean? Just pretend like just ignore the problems. Just ignore the issues. And I don't want to face that. So I'm just going to brush it off, or I'm going to get defensive about it. And instead just accept it as part of the whole picture. And as humans, we want neat, clean answers. We want neat, clean categories. Am I allowed to like this? Am I allowed to like this person? Like, I get that. I get that impulse, but it's just not how the world works. Like, it just doesn't. And nothing is ever going to change what Nightmare Before Christmas has meant to you and to so many people. And that's beautiful. And that's great. We also don't need to sit here and be like, all hail Tim Burton. You know what I mean? Like, like it's both and. Yeah. It's all of it.
I feel like I've been specifically not doing that this whole time, you know, like especially talking about this movie, you know, like I love Beetlejuice, I love Nightmare Before Christmas. I'm not saying I love Tim Burton's Nightmare, you know, I love these movies.
Exactly.
But I mean, it's also tougher of a situation when the art is still being made by the artist, right? So like, so how can you support it going forward? Which, you know, we brought up Harry Potter a second ago. Like, obviously, our memories with Harry Potter are always going to be there. We're always going to love it. And how do we support it going forward? Because it directly benefits, you know, goes right into her pockets. And that's like, that's a worthwhile thing to bring up. I'm like, I don't know, you know, but tough questions.
I mean, my instinct was like, you can pirate things.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. Right. Like I am not a person. I'm not gonna like draw really clear lines in the sand about morality in those kind of situations. Do what you gotta do. Like, whatever. Right. It's fine. Tim Burton's fucking fine. J.K. Rowling's fucking fine. Like, I'm not worried about them not getting paid for something. I'm sorry. I'm just not. Like,
getting back to the movie itself, there has been discussions back in 2001. Disney wanted to do a sequel to this movie. And they didn't want to do it in stop motion. They wanted to do it computer animation. And Tim Burton, I guess, to a credit, he said, quote, "I was very protective of Nightmare not to do sequels of that kind. Like, quote, Jack Visits Thanksgiving World or other kind of things, because I felt the movie had a purity to it that people like, because it's a mass market kind of thing. It was important to have that kind of purity of it." And I agree with that. I mean, that's why I love that it's its own thing, and it's still its own thing, that we have all this marketing and all this, merchandise around it, but it's an unchanged product,
Yes.
But that might not always be the case.
I also am just so, and have been for years, over the reboot market. Like, I'm done with it. I'm so done with it. I've been done with it for a long time. I think it's uncreative. It's not interesting, and I'm done with it. So I do respect that. Like, let it be what it is, and let's come up with new stuff. Like, we don't need to reboot everything, especially because the originals exist and you can enjoy them.
Yes. But also, let's keep rebooting everything, because I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, because we get a lot of good reboots, that do happen. I think it's just how you go about it.
Have an example?
Yeah, I think the most recent Halloween was a great reboot. I'm excited for Halloween Kills. I'm thinking of other reboots.
I mean, I won't say that I think like all reboots are bad, or that there hasn't been anything that's been well done. But also it's just such an oversaturated thing right now.
Yeah.
We could also just pause it even. Like, it's like, I need new stuff. We've created a generation of just reboots, it feels like. And I'm like, that's boring as fuck. Like, I want it to not be such a superfluous thing.
Sure. Yeah. I think there's an audience for everything, right? I think there's, is it oversaturated? Totally. I think there's also so much content out there that I just love that there's something for everything right now, including what our generation really loves is nostalgia and going back. And for better or worse, that's a lot of the stuff that we get right now. Well, I mean, we'll see if this gets rebooted, because in 2019, Disney was considering a stop motion sequel or a live action remake.
Oh, of course they were. Of course they were.
This was back in
wouldn't they?
2019. I haven't heard any news since then, but that definitely was coming. It's funny that we disagree so hard on reboots, because I think reboots can be very fun. But I'm not saying that I've enjoyed some reboots too. I'm not saying they're all terrible. I think what happened, I think when it first started happening, it was kind of a fun idea. And then I think it just took over the whole market in a way that was not great. So sure. Now I feel very passionately about it. And I'm like, we at least need a break from it. It's taken over so much, and it's such a focus that we're not getting enough new stuff in the mainstream. Like, there's endless stuff on the internet, but I mean, mainstream feature films and TV shows and stuff like that is all regurgitated stuff. And I'm kind of just I want new things, so then we can have a new wave and a new nostalgia. Yeah. We can't just live in the 90s forever. Sure. No. Or the 80s for that matter.
Yeah,
right now.
Exactly. The 80s and the 90s.
Yeah. And I feel that. I mean, that's an obstacle right now in the horror genre, is everyone wants to bring back these titans of horror, and make sequels, but it's not creating new fans. You know what I mean? We're not
exactly.
We're just, we need to have new stuff out there to bring in new fans. And I think it's important to have new things. Yeah. And I also just shamelessly enjoy being pandered to, so
that's fair.
I don't know.
I respect your willingness to admit that. Yeah. I really do.
I love being pandered.
That's fair. I did also want to, we kind of briefly touched on it, but to come back around and wrap up things about actually The Nightmare Before Christmas, because this has been a great conversation, but I think we touched in a lot of different areas, just
other than this movie. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll go back.
Honestly, in such a short time, I feel like we kind of hit some very profound topics.
That's what this movie does.
But I do want to go back to Nightmare Before Christmas specifically, and maybe just talk about the film itself, what it means to us, what it means to other people, the fact that in a lot of ways people have attached to it as a movie for people who feel like misfits, for those of us who feel like we don't always fit in or at one point didn't fit in or whatever. This has been a film that I think people have really attached to in that regard, which is interesting, especially when you think about where it came from, right? Like, because undeniably Tim Burton, was a misfit at Disney, right?
Yep.
And that's kind of where it all started. So it's kind of creating this land surrounding these huge ritualized celebrations, holidays that everyone is a part of, but yet it's creating a world that those who feel like they're not part of like the regular world can connect with, those who feel like they don't fit in. And I think there's 100% just something very powerful about that. I also just because I was rewatching the movie today and like I kind of had a moment where I was like, I really relate to Jack in a lot of ways. I think I relate to him more than Sally personally, because he just like, when you think of him as a character and what he's actually doing in that film, like it's not this act of terror that he is trying to make happen, right?
No.
When he kind of takes over Christmas, he's not trying to like hurt people.
He's trying to bring it to more people.
Exactly. And so there is a desire to kind of always be looking for the next thing, right? He has something in him where he feels like he's done Halloween, right? He's Jack Skellington. He's mastered Halloween. He's the king of it all. Yep. And so he needs to do the next thing. And there's something very beautiful about that to me. Like he's trying to do what he does, but he's doing it in a new way. And so he kind of adopts Christmas and tries. I love the scene where he's trying so hard to understand Christmas. And he pulls out he's like trying to understand it from a logical standpoint. And he like pulls out a book and on the front of it, it says scientific method.
Yeah.
And he's like trying to figure it out. Like he wants to get it because he wants to evolve. He wants to evolve. That like spoke to my soul. And in it, things kind of go crazy and he does cause problems, but like the intention and the goal is never cruelty. It's never to try and like hurt anyone.
Right.
It's to try and exactly evolve and bring what he is about to other people. And like, I don't know, I'm getting emotional. It's like, it's really beautiful,
I think it's really interesting too that you say that you relate, because I feel like people watching the movie, a lot of people relate to Jack. I related to Jack in a lot of ways of feeling like a misfit and wanting to share things that I really like and people didn't understand it. And I mean, just the filmmakers watching these behind the scenes, like all these crew members were all like, yeah, Jack was the one I related to in making it. You had Danny Elfman, which created the songs, created the voice of Jack. And then you had the speaking part. Chris Sarandon did all his lines because they felt that Danny Elfman's performance speaking wasn't as great. So now you have two different actors that are like, yeah, this is my Jack. And then you have Henry Selick, the director. He was like, yeah, this is the one I relate to the most, is Jack. Then you have Tim Burton that created, I mean, like everyone creating it was like, yeah, I'm Jack. And so it's fascinating to hear that an audience is even like, we're all Jack in a way, or Sally. I mean, in Sally is the supportive character that wants him to succeed too, also doesn't want him, that thinks he's not looking around what's there already,
Totally. Yeah, I can relate to Sally too. I guess I think it's the synthesis of the two, right?
Jack
and that,
Sally. Yeah,
exactly. We can live like Jack and Sally if we want.
Where you can always find me. We'll have Halloween on Christmas.
But yeah, like the synthesis of the two is really the constant thing. It's the constant struggle, right? Like,
right.
Like it's the day-to-day thing, like finding the balance between finding the balance between going after something or creating something or sharing something or putting yourself out there and embracing what's around you, embracing what you have, embracing who you are. And I feel like that's such a great representation of the cycle of growth and evolution, right? Yeah. Like intense moments of wanting to do something different because you're feeling disenchanted or you're feeling like you need to move on, or you're feeling like you need to do something new. And that's a powerful force, and that's a beautiful force. That's can arguably be a huge part of the creative force, is the desire, like, okay, now what's next? Now what's next? But also it's super dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing if that's where you always live. So Sally represents the balance to that, right? Like, in appreciating where you are and finding happiness there. And so, yeah, I guess I would say maybe the balance between Jack and Sally is kind of the space that we're all constantly teetering, right? And trying to like figure out. And obviously, going back to what you said before, we have Caroline Thompson to thank for that, because if Sally wasn't a more developed character, we wouldn't have that. We would just have this tale of Jack and his like very laser-like focus on what he's trying to achieve. And then we'd have a very hollow Sally, and it wouldn't balance the same way.
Exactly.
But yeah, as characters, we get a really beautiful balance of those two forces, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this movie is so nice. So wonderful.
It is so nice. And yeah, and I also, you said this at the very beginning, and I think it's a good way to wrap up. I love that it is it is a celebration of Halloween, and it is a celebration of Christmas, and it is like a celebration of what both those things bring, and a recognition of the fact that they're very different in a lot of ways, you know?
Yeah.
But we can love them and enjoy them for what they are as celebrations. And that's great.
Yeah. And it's also just a testament of like loving what you love, you know?
Yeah.
And I love when his Christmas plan has beautifully crashed and burned, literally. You know, he's in the graveyard. And he has the lines, you know, he's kind of, woe is me, why didn't this work out? And then he kind of changes his tune. He's like, well, what the heck? I went and did my best. And by God, I really did something swell, you know, of like...
I love that.
Like, fuck, I mean, I might be standing in the ruins of it, but at least I did it.
Exactly. Oh man,
I fucking love this movie.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, even though it was like it was a beautiful disaster, right? Because also every one of those characters, like every one of those small children that were terrorized by like Jack Skellington's Christmas.
Yep.
Like, you're never going to forget that Christmas. You know?
No, they're going to be the biggest fans of that in the future too. That's how it works.
Right?
I mean, you get traumatized as a kid, and then you know, as an adult, you're like, fuck, that was really cool.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. That's one of my favorite scenes too, is just all the little clips of all the mayhem as he's like
it's great.
Hopping from house to house.
Lights come on, scream. Lights come on, scream.
Yeah, it's just insanity. And I'm like, this is great.
Like, what did Santa bring you this year, Timmy? And he pulls out a shrunken head.
Yes, it's so good. It's so good.
Oh man. Big fans of Nightmare Before Christmas. And I hope you are too. And I hope this encourages you to have your yearly watch sometime soon, because we're in the holiday season, and excited to have more holiday episodes coming up.
Definitely. And I mean, there was a lot. We talked about a lot in this episode. So there's plenty of things you can fight with us about at Happy Harvest Horror Show at gmail.com and on Instagram. So hit us up. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Yeah, it's definitely a classic. And I think we'll do a few more episodes on the Christmas meets Halloween space, or like winter holidays meets horror space.
Yeah. And
I mean, Merry Christmas, Happy Halloween, and Happy Birthday.
Oh, thanks. It's all in one today. I love it. Best of all days. All right. Yes. Well, we'll see you all next time.